Welcome to episode 68 of Everything Sports with Aman and Evan. I'm your host, Aman Kearney,
And I'm your co-host, Evan Garber.
and we talk about the hottest topics in sports that occurred in the past week. And I know it's been a long time since we've posted an episode, but we finally made time for it. And that's why you follow the TikTok and YouTube, because we post a lot of shorts every week. So that's another way to stay connected to the podcast. But now we are back with our weekly podcast. Now we'll try to do every Wednesday at around 2 o'clock Pacific time. So make sure to look out for a podcast. And in today's podcast, we have obviously the NBA Finals, Denver Nuggets getting their first ring in franchise history. And then obviously NHL, the Vegas Golden Knights won their first in franchise history. And then the Oakland A's boycott, because we weren't at the game, but that was something to behold from what we heard, what we saw, the alerts, the clips, everything. It was crazy. And if you want to know more about sports, want to see us talk about other topics, as I mentioned, follow us on YouTube, TikTok, all our social media platforms are on screen right now, so that's another way to stay connected to the podcast. But without further ado, we will talk about the NBA Finals Monday evening. Denver Nuggets beating the Miami Heat to close out the series. Personally, I wanted the Miami Heat to win, but as I always say, we try to keep it as unbiased as possible on this podcast. So I will say in game 5, the role players like Kyle Lowry, who's now a role player in Miami, he stepped up, and both teams didn't really shoot the ball too well. I mean, the Nuggets were ice cold in the first half. Compared to the second half, they still, again, they shot poorly, but it was just because Miami shot way more poorly. And Jimmy Butler, we keep saying playoff Jimmy, and I said it's no more in like so many group chats to sort of spark something, I guess. Because I was losing hope, because we say playoff Jimmy and we can't like give up just because of one series. Every player has one series. I mean, I said it as a joke. Playoff Jimmy, statistically, I guess you can still say it's a thing, because the reason why they're in the finals, obviously Caleb Martin, everyone stepped up, but the reason why they're in the finals is because of Jimmy Butler and no one else. You take Jimmy off the team, the Heat are a perennial top 5 pick team. If you take Jimmy off that team, I will be honest. Because, I mean, you saw it that Bucks series. Giannis came back, and what did Jimmy do? Gave him 56 and 42 points. And then against New York, and then against Boston. And I feel like Denver, they have a lot of size and a lot of complementary players. And their one hope was Michael Porter Jr., who couldn't shoot the ball whatsoever, got the nickname Michael, the possession ends here, Porter Jr. I mean, we say it as a joke, but sometimes it's true. Sometimes he doesn't make the extra pass, but this time he got a double-double with points and rebounds. He stepped it up, and it was a gutsy, fight-it-out win for the Denver Nuggets to close out the game, because closeout games in series, especially NBA Finals, are always the toughest. Nikola Jokic, Finals MVP, he seems more excited to go home to Serbia than to actually win the championship. But that was just my initial thoughts. So, what are your initial thoughts on how the series went and how Game 5 went?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with a lot of what you said, but I'll be honest, I didn't watch a whole lot of the series. I didn't really have much interest, to be honest. I do want to see Jimmy and Nikola Jokic both win rings, but I just didn't find much interest in the series because I did figure that the Nuggets were going to run away with it like they did. Of course, the Heat did put up a little bit of a fight in Game 5, and of course they won a game as well, but I didn't really think they had a chance. I mean, especially in Game 5 when you have a Nuggets team shooting as poorly as they did, and then you shoot as poorly as the Heat did, like that's just not a recipe for success. You have to take advantage when the Nuggets are struggling like that because it doesn't happen very often. And of course, in a must-win game, you have to take advantage. But they did not step up enough in that moment. I didn't think that they were. And of course, like you said, playoff Jimmy. He wasn't really playoff Jimmy as much this series as we've seen previously. And I mean, you can only do so much for a team. You gotta have guys like Bam Adebayo step up. Bam Adebayo, he couldn't really do anything defensively against Nikola Jokic. He could limit him a little bit, but Nikola Jokic still was a dog out there. And then you need guys like Kyle Lowry. You need guys like uh, Duncan Robinson. You need all those guys to step it up. And of course, you had Tyler Hero out for the series. Pretty much did see the court in Game 5, but that's a huge piece that you're missing because he's not going to shoot 20% or 10% or whatever the Heat were shooting from three in the first half. He's not going to do that to you. He's not going to shoot that poorly, and that's very key for a team that doesn't have necessarily the greatest shooters, and especially against a team and the Nuggets they have very 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 great shooters. Um, yeah, I mean, congratulations to the Nuggets. Obviously, Nikola Jokic is insane. The country of Serbia is going wild right now. They got the best NBA player in the world and the best tennis player in the world. So congratulations to them.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean that's really all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Hero, I don't even think he played a minute in Game 5. To be honest, you could have put him in the first half, or even pockets in the second half where the Heat were struggling. Like, you made him active for the game. At least try and play him. And I mean, I agree with you. I chose Miami to win. Sort of wishful thinking because the Nuggets, this time they were actually fully healthy. Last year they got bounced out in 5 to a Warriors team that eventually went on to win the finals. And obviously that was just with Jokic. Like, you guys have heard it numerous times. I felt Joel Embiid is a better player than Jokic. Jokic is a cone on defense. I still believe Jokic doesn't play defense, but now there's no argument to make that Embiid is better, to be honest. He might be better on the defensive end, but just the pure dominance by Nikola Jokic just completely cancels out any argument against him. They gave Embiid his MVP this year, sort of. I guess now it seems like out of sympathy. Jokic, if the MVP wasn't a regular season award, Jokic would be going 3 years in a row, which is kind of crazy to think about. You said, and Serbia must be going crazy right now with tennis, basketball, and there's a perfect segue into hockey because Miami is a city reeling right now, and Florida as a whole because you got the Heat losing the finals, and the very next day they lose the Stanley Cup finals to a Vegas Golden Knight team who seemed very dominant to start the series right away. Then the Florida Panthers got one and still couldn't finish the job. So, what are your thoughts on the NHL finals and how that played out? And the Golden Knights getting their first Stanley Cup in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I totally forgot that it was the first one in franchise history. I thought the first season that they won it, but I remember that they did not. They went to the Stanley Cup, which is obviously amazing, but they did not finish the job. And I knew from the beginning that this series was over. You could tell from Game 1, the Panthers were in complete shambles. You had all those fights, especially that one where they headlocked the guy and then he took a cheap shots at his face. I mean, you knew from then it was game over. They stood zero chance in this series. The Golden Knights are just so good. Jack Eichel trade was a big trade, arguably the biggest trade in NHL history. Got him to the Stanley Cup and won it all. He's has finally won a Stanley Cup before Connor McDavid, which I know a lot of you guys are saying that like, oh, Jack Eichel's better than Connor McDavid now. He won a Stanley Cup, but I think that's not true because I mean Connor McDavid, he's had a good team around him, but this Golden Knights team is just so damn good. Uh, I mean, they literally were so good from the beginning. They literally first year to go to the Stanley Cup, and then they've been in the playoffs. I want to say every year since then. but they've just been so dominant. Uh, and for the Panthers, Kachuk, he tried to do his best, but I think emotion got the best of him as well. And I think that was really the big factor of the series. Emotions just got the best of them. They clearly just could not do anything. They ran out of steam. It was a good Cinderella run for them, obviously, but it just wasn't enough for that Golden Knights team that's just so dominant. And of course, my predictions were way off, but it's all right. I mean, congratulations to the Golden Knights. They definitely deserved it after that dominant performance throughout the whole playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, predictions are predictions. Almost every sports channel makes them right or wrong. But I do agree with what you said about the player to player comparison, saying he's better than Connor McDavid, because I feel like, not even in hockey, just in sports in general, in hockey, basketball, football, there's so many arguments of this player is better than that player because he has more rings. It's not that simple. One player cannot do it himself. Believe it or not, Jordan, so many players, so many people and athletes, greatest athlete of all time, he needed help to win a championship. Tom Brady, the best football player of all time. Without good receivers, no one could win. No great quarterback. Well, I guess you can say Mahomes had average receivers, but they're not like third strings or fourth string receivers. And you look around all sports, team sports, you need a teammate to win. LeBron needed Kyrie to win, Kevin Love to win, D Wade to win, Chris Bosh to win, Anthony Davis to win. Stephen Curry needed Klay Thompson, Draymond Green to win. Like, it goes both ways. Like, you can't just say this player is better than this player. Like, compare their individual skill rather than their success, because no one player can do it. It's not like tennis or golf where it's tennis or golf where most of the sport is pretty much individual, apart from like the players camp and stuff like that, or boxing where it's genuinely an individual sport for the most part. So I feel like those discussions, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Congrats, Golden Knights, for winning your first ring in franchise history. But, I mean, the McDavid conversations, they need to stop it immediately. And we will now talk about the Oakland A's fan reverse boycott. I mean, as people living in the Bay Area all their life, I will say, I mean, as kids, we won raffles to go to A's games, as field trips, so many times, I'll be honest. Like, for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of field trips. We got to go see A's games, and I think the Coliseum, the Raiders moved out to go to Vegas. Allegiant Stadium looks beautiful, but I mean, the Coliseum just looks extremely ugly, I'll be honest. There's like some possum or whatever living in the one of the boxes or whatever. Like, just the sanitary level of the stadium, it's terrible. It's not even kept well. The A's were once a really great organization, and obviously, those of you who are familiar with Moneyball, it makes you more shocked that the A's were this A's team was still the same organization that Billy Bean pretty much revived, I'll be honest, because they were sucking. No one expected them to do well, and they went on an incredible run. And this organization, they're really insulting all those iconic players. And I say iconic because that's what they are. All these iconic players that came before them, they're insulting them, to be honest. And it's not just the players, it's ownership. It's more ownership than anything, to be honest. And you got the sell the team chants, all the signs around the stadium. They made it a toxic environment as much as possible, and rightfully so. Honestly, the A's deserve it. And what was your reaction to this boycott? Because it was something to behold.
Yeah, I mean, as a Giants fan, I'm on the outside, but I'm still, like you said, we're right here in the middle of it. We're right in the Bay Area, and I think, I mean, I just honestly have so much respect for those A's fans. They've been sticking with the team for years, despite how garbage they've been at times and how garbage they are right now. Of course, they've won 7 in a row, which is great. I hope they keep it going, but I mean, just the ownership is just absolutely disgraceful to the organization, to the city, to everything. I mean, these fans, they just want their team to stay in the city. The city themselves wants the team to stay. And then you're out here trying to go to Vegas, trying to go away from them, where Vegas doesn't even want you, it seems like. Like I don't know, like of course it's just a money thing. This obviously that's what it is, but when you have a city right here in the Bay Area that supports you, that really just loves the team, it's hard for them to move away. I mean, they showed it yesterday. They really, really, really love this team. They want what's best for the team. And when you're just sitting there, not caring about the fans, just caring about your own money, not the, you don't care about the team, honestly, because you're just out here trading your best players every single year. You don't really care. Like you're even the talent you have right now. Like where is the talent? There is no talent really on that team. Not even a young talent to root for. There's really nothing for them to cheer for at this moment, and you're just out here trying to take it away from them. But they're still showing you love and support every single game. Even the 2,000 fans or 3,000 fans that may show up at the game, you know that they are supporting you from their homes, but they're just pissed off because you're not helping them. You're not being their friend. Really, what it is. Like you're just betraying them, betraying this beautiful city that has shown love for every single sports team that has been there. For the Raiders, they've shown so much love despite their not great success. Of course, the Warriors, they've shown so much respect. Everyone loves the Warriors, and then now the A's. Like everyone in the Oakland really, really loves them and really adore them. Even despite the really, really rough seasons, and it's hard to take that away from them. And I didn't live back in the '90s, but the '90s, the Giants were so close to moving Tampa Bay, but the fans they showed their love, they showed their support, and the organization did what the fans wanted. They kept him here in San Francisco, and that's really what the A's need to focus on. They need to focus on the fans and how much support that they do have here in the Bay Area because you don't necessarily need to move to Oakland. I mean, you're one of the most profitable teams last year in all of baseball, and and now you're trying to move to Vegas, where of course you're going to get a lot more money, but your team is extremely incompetent right now. It's going to be hard to build a team again, especially without ownership. I think that you need to stay here in Oakland, where the fans love you and they will support you no matter what. But of course, Fisher, you need to sell that team because nobody likes you. Nobody wants you to be the owner of the Oakland A's.
I mean, I 1000% agree with that. And another thing, you mentioned the Warriors briefly. They may have moved out of Oakland, but they still stayed in the Bay Area. They still stay in the Bay Area. Obviously, tickets are more expensive. They've gotten newer fans. Chase Center has been a little more quiet. Not a little, way more quiet than Oracle Arena. But sometimes the time comes to move. It may have been a play for money, but they still stayed in the Bay. The Warriors, they were the Bay Area's team. They still are the Bay Area's team. Obviously, you mentioned the Giants briefly. I didn't know that, and that's shocking. And they actually cared about the human aspect of the sport because when a lot of players mention the human aspect is forgotten and sports is just a business, that's very true. But the human aspect of the sport could also be related to the fans because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting your money from anything just outside the concessions. Your money is found by fans buying the ticket. You thought you didn't have fans, you thought you just needed money, and now they're thinking of moving to Vegas. Nobody wants that. Their fans in Oakland were so loyal to the Raiders, and to be honest, I think for the Raiders especially, the time came to move, and maybe there wasn't space anywhere else to build a new stadium in the Bay Area because, I mean, the A Stadium, there was like a dirt mound in the middle of the football field. So I somewhat get what the Raiders did, but I mean, the A's, I mean, the fans showed up. The fans showed up. Find some way to if you don't want to build a new stadium in the Bay, at least do something to try and like highly remodel the stadium. Like spend a lot of money just in remodeling the stadium. Obviously, you can't move to San Francisco because that's literally Giants territory. You're not going to do anything there. But there's so many other places in the Bay Area that you can move to. So I feel like remember the human aspect part of the sport, because if you move in the Bay Area to a nicer stadium, make a new stadium that's much nicer, or spend a lot of money to remodel the stadium. Honestly, the stadium's so old, I don't know if you can even remodel it at this point. But try doing one of those two, and I promise you fans will start to show up, and that's how you'll get money. And I mean, you mentioned it too. Why you keep trading your players for no reason every year? The same thing happens. And that player goes on to be amazing. I'm pretty sure it was Aaron Judge was on the A's at one point, and you and you gave up on him. You keep giving up on players way too early, and these players become stars and superstars on other teams, and you're just leaving your own fans like thinking, what are we doing? Because they might get the best prospect in baseball, one of the best prospects in baseball to be excited about, and then 3 years later, they're just being shipped off to an organization where they become a superstar. So the A's, it's clearly a management issue, ownership issue. Sell the team so the organization goes in a better direction. Because honestly, I have to say, I don't watch baseball much, but when I do, I'm a Giants fan. But if we could renewed the Battle of the Bay series. It's still a thing, but obviously when obviously in any rivalry when both teams are amazing and both teams are at their peak, it's just way better to watch. Way better to watch, not when it's one-sided. And the A's, they're a laughing stock of baseball right now, and they never were really up until recently. So you sell the team, move to a new stadium in the Bay Area, or invest a lot of money in remodeling the stadium, and then the fans will show up. I promise you that. Promise you that. But without further ado, that ends episode 68. Make sure to tune in next Wednesday for episode 69. I believe the NBA draft is next week, so a lot of coverage. You'll get a lot of shorts. We'll talk about it in a podcast, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, Wembanyama is supposed to go first, but make sure to follow us on TikTok and YouTube. We will be putting maybe mock drafts, trades, or whatever, because a lot of news will be coming out shortly in the world of sports, really. So, congrats to the Nuggets, Golden Knights, for getting their rings. And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Have a great week.